Welcome back to Fishing with Vance. The old temperature says 26 degrees outside right now, and there's snow all over the ground, so that means it's another day in the old Vance's garage. So, what we're going to talk about today, let's get right into it. What I want to talk about today, and let me give you a quick shot of the Pelican Bass Raider. She's pretty much under siege with wintertime storage and junk right now. But I have a plan to get this all cleaned up next week. Some of this stuff is getting moved when my daughter moves. And next week is going to be the kickoff of Pelican Bass Raider mods. I've got a whole bunch of ideas for that, so stay tuned. I promise you next week is going to be Bass Raider mod time. The temperature here in PA is supposed to be, I don't know, like the highs of like 12 degrees and lows of 4. So I'll definitely be in the garage again next week. All right, without further ado, what I want to talk about today, I was starting to look through some of my tackle to figure out what I needed, what I didn't need, what I needed to maybe order. You know, the old Bass Pro magazine showed up, or catalog I should say, and that thing's, I don't know, yay thick, a whole bunch of more stuff that I don't need, and maybe a few things that I do. So I was starting to take just a semi-inventory of what I had and what I don't have. So I got to thinking about putting a video out. It's been a little while since I had a video out, and so today what I want to talk about is pretty much my go-to plastic baits that I use to catch bass. And then I'll probably do another video of all the baits that I absolutely suck at and cannot catch bass. But today I'm going to focus on the ones that just catch them for me, and I believe they can catch them for you too. But because if I can get them on them, anybody can. But these are my go-to baits. If you follow Fishing with Vance, you know I use these all the time. And I'll talk about each one, and then also how I rig them, because I don't rig them the same as everybody else. Those of you who follow me know that I tend to rig them mojo, especially these KVD boys in the middle. But I'm going to show you how I rig each one of them, from the tubes to my finesse worm, the flukes, and last but not least, the Gary Yamamoto, sorry. Senkos. So let's talk about each one of them first. Let's start over here with the tubes. So the tubes that I use are mostly from Strike King. There might be a few others in here, and I'll use various colors throughout the year. And again, those of you who follow the channel, if you haven't, take a look at some of the videos on me catching bass in the spring with these lighter colored tubes. You know, I've got probably 2 or 3 videos of this tube here featuring the mustard colored tube. But I use the 3.5 inch model. They're all 3.5 inch tubes. And like I said, at certain times of year, certain colors will work. But consistently, where I fish every single year, the mustard and the chartreuse pepper, these catch more than any other tube, and anything else for that matter, for me in the spring. And I'll show you how to rig it. But this is probably from a go-to perspective on the tube. It's definitely the mustard. So mustard color tube. I'll never forget, I was at Cabela's with my fishing partners, and we saw these on the end cap. We weren't even going to buy them. We're like, yeah, check out mustard. And we bought some. And the other guys, they really don't use them much. But for me, man, I'll tell you, in the spring, it's just, there's that probably 2-3 week window there when the water is super clear that they just can't stay off these. They'll just blast these. And it's been consistent for me on these every single season. Some of these other baits, you know, they go run hot and cold on them. Maybe they've seen them too much, but not this. And I think it's because this color looks like the belly of a bluegill. That's my theory, but I'm not sure. But definitely, from a go-to perspective, mustard. You got to try some mustard tubes if you haven't yet. And I'll come back to how I rig them. moving on, let's go over to KVD, finesse worm. Now, where I fish, we tend to catch, we've caught some bigger fish, but nothing like they do in the south. Our fish are usually between, our bass run in between, anywhere from little dinky doos, but they'll run, the standard fish we catch out there is about 14 inches, 15 inches maybe. And, but we have, nailed some 3, 4, 5, and even a 6-pounder out at our lake. So, the size of the worm actually doesn't matter, I don't feel, but still, the reason I bring it up is because I do catch there are a lot of smaller fish in there, and, let's face it, we all like something tugging on the line. So I use the KVD Perfect Plastics. Other worms will work for you. If you watch Realistic Fishing, my man, he can catch them on anything. He'll try stuff from Ollie's Bargain Outlet, Kmart, Walmart, you name it. And all that stuff's great. But for me, I use some Zoom. But for the most part, my go-to worms are the KVD Perfect Plastic, and it is the Fat Baby Finesse. Now, you might say, well, why the Fat Baby Finesse? And let me see. I might have to put the camera down and do this. Hold on one second. I don't have the regular finesse worm out here. Hopefully you can see this. But the regular finesse worm that they sell, it's not as thick in this area right here. This section from here to there is thicker on the Fat Baby Finesse. And to me, it gives the worm just enough weight. You can throw a little further on lighter tackle. It holds up better on the hook. It's just a better worm. So I have switched over to pretty much exclusively the Fat Baby Finesse. Just the section that you're going to put the hook into is a little thicker. And again, the additional weight, you could throw it. And I use these for everything from smallmouth, largemouth. I've even caught catfish on these. And so it's just my go-to. I'll show you how I rig them here in a second. But in terms of colors, I'll just set this guy over here. In terms of colors, I've tried every color that they make, and I've done okay on, like, here's green pumpkin. This is black and blue swirl. I've done okay on those. The biggest fish I ever caught was on this. This is watermelon red fleck, and that color has got the biggest, my PB on bass, a 6-pounder out there. So I can't, the watermelon red fleck, I can't really talk too much negative about it, because day in, day out, it's going to catch fish for you all year round. And then, but I have to talk about the two that we introduced last year. And if you haven't seen some of these videos, go back and watch them. But this color here, the honey candy, was new. I don't know if it was new last year. It was new to us last year. It looks almost like an oil color, and it does have the black and purple flakes in it. And they could not stay off this and this other color called the green pumpkin pepper and gold. Now, we were goofing around calling it silver and gold and goofing around like we always do, but these two last year, Fat Baby Finesse, these are the 5-inch variety. The green pumpkin pepper and gold and the honey candy, they definitely dominated the scene last year for me. I caught more bass on these two baits than anything else in the entire tackle bag. So I don't know what it was about this color. I'll definitely throw them again this year and go from there. Now, the color that started it all, that if I can't catch a single fish, I'm going to put this on my line. And I don't care if I'm smallmouth fishing, largemouth, whatever, it's blue fleck. Sometimes we'll call it purple fleck, blue fleck. It's a purple worm with some blue fleck in it. And this has always been my go-to bait. And I know a lot of the guys that watch, this is their go-to bait. This catches, I've caught walleye on this color. Really every fish that I have fished for, except I think for carp, I've caught on this color worm. I've caught a million smallies on it, but even more largies on it. So purple fleck is really the bait that we used from the very beginning out at our lake, and takes me back to my younger days. We used to use something called a purple jelly worm. It was made by Mans, but anyway, if you're going to pick up just a few of these, I would recommend definitely the blue fleck, watermelon, red fleck, honey candy, and green and pepper and gold. So these are the ones you want to try. In time of season, again, in this last year, these two caught fish all year long, but the honey candy and the pepper and gold were catching them in the spring, whereas the darker ones, I think, were not catching them until later in the season. Anyway, all right. Moving on from KVD. Let's move over here. Now, the flukes. There's a million different flukes on the market. Admittedly, this is probably my weakest plastic to fish with. I don't know why that is. Probably my patience level is not that great. But there's a lot of different flukes, and you guys know. But the ones that I use are these. They're made by Zoom, and they're called just the fluke. They're smaller. They come in a 10-pack, and the reason I like these, let me take one of these guys out. Hold on. The reason I like these is just because they're so, as my old partner used to say, they're so supple. The plastic is really soft, and you can bring that hook through there really easily. And when you fish with this, and when you jig this, you can fish it as a jerk bait. You can bring it along the top. If you put some weight on it, you can fish it along the bottom. It definitely looks like a dying bait fish, and it just works. And the reason I like these, because I don't lose a lot of fish. The other flukes that are thicker plastic and maybe heavier, I tend to lose a lot of fish. I don't get good hookups with those. Probably because I'm using smaller hooks, but or not big enough hook for where I fish. But this has caught a lot of fish for me. I've caught a big, not this color. Actually, yeah, baby bass. I think I caught my biggest one at our secondary lake, about a 4-pounder. So these will definitely work. I tend not to use, of all of these, I probably use these the least, and I probably should use them more because they look exactly like a minnow. The colors that I like albino, which is right here. It's just white and has a hint of blue in it. Again, twitching that along the bottom, it gives great action. I rig it the same way, Mojo. I'll show you how I put the hook on this thing. And I twitch it along the bottom, and it just twitches along and then falls, twitches along and then falls. And this is also very effective. But I like this color, is albino. This color here is called Smoking Shad. It's a blue. Let me get it out for you. Hold on. The Smoking Shad is like a gray, but it has these, probably can't see it, I'll put it real close. It has these little blue flecks in it again that kind of glisten. And again, if you pop this thing along, this looks just like a minnow. This is called Smoking Shad. And same thing, it's just the fluke. And it has very little tail on it, but enough to give it some good action. And then last but certainly not least is the baby bass. And baby bass is my partner, the Fluke Master's favorite color. That's his go-to, my man Steve. And he catches all kind of bass on it. But baby bass, I've used that as well. And none of them really outperform the other one. It just depends. I'll try any and all of them. I can't really say that any one color has worked better for me than others. They've all caught their share of fish. All right, last but not least over here, I have our Senko. And everybody makes a Senko, and I know these Gary Yamamotos they're, as my dad used to say, these are dear. They cost some money. They're, compared to the others, they're a little bit on the pricey side. But for whatever reason, they catch fish better than the other ones. I don't know if it's their texture or the scent or their color. But anyway, they tend to do a better job. I don't know what's going on. All of a sudden, my light looks like it's ready to explode or something. Crazy. All right. Anywho, so, and on top of that, there's a million different colors. And I only have one color out here today because this is the one that I fish the most. It's the red shad laminate. A few years ago, I was fishing with my fishing partner, and we were trying all different kind of colors, and he put this thing on, and the rest is history. I mean, I think he caught like 10 fish and 11 casts or something, and we've been sticking with the red shad laminate ever since. And I'll show you how I rig this. I fish this Wacky. I don't fish this Texas rigged or Mojo or whatever. I always fish it Wacky, and I'll show you how I rig that. The only thing I modify in this is sometimes I'll peg it with my good old fashioned my penny nails, my plugs, and that works a lot. That works great. Depending on the circumstances, if I'm trying to get down there deep to them, maybe or they tend to be hitting a little bit more movement, I'll peg them with this. And when I do that, it gives a diving action on the worm. And when you don't, it just flutters down, and then when you pop, it comes back, pop, and it falls back. So that's it. Those are definitely my go-to plastics. There's others that I'll try here and there, double-tail jig. Sometimes the bigger variety of these, the 6.5-inch variety of these, of worm, depending on the circumstances. But really, these are the main guys that I will use to catch bass from a soft plastics perspective. All right, guys. So let me show you how I rig each one of these plastics. We'll start with the tubes. What I use for the tube, I use these jig heads made by Arky. You can get them at Walmart. I've seen them. I get them online, but I use the lighter version. These are, I believe these are 1/8 ounce. These are 1/8 ounce or quarter. I believe they're 1/8 ounce. These are really the smallest ones. The reason that is because I like a slow spiral down. I guess it's because I fish a lot of these things for the fish to hit on the way down. I like a slow drop. Some guys like a bigger, heavier jig head so they can hit the bottom and stir up a bunch and pound this thing up and down on the bottom, and that'll attract bass. That's not really how I fish them. Sometimes I do, but for the most part I use these. And let me just show you how I rig it. I'm gonna throw it on this other color that has also done well for us. This is called the bleeding tube. I think they changed the name for political reasons, but it's now called the green and red flake. So, all right, all you do to rig this, very simple. One thing to remember with this is you got to put this in before you tie it on. I've done that mistake a million times. So, if you tie the jig head on, then put this in, you have to kind of bring it from the top, and it rips the whole thing off. So that's not how to do it. What you want to do is put this jig head up in here first, then tie it on. Now you might notice I have this. This is a straight shank. Some of them, the eyelet's coming straight up. Some of them they'll come in an angle. It just changes how it falls. I like the one that goes straight up. So all you do for this, just give this thing a wet, and just wet it, and then you just shove it on up in there. Bring it all the way up to the top, and then you just push it through. And once you push it through, the eyelet's right there. You tie it on. I don't use any other weight with this, and this guy's good to go. Now, positives of this obviously are big time hookups. Usually you catch these, you hook up a fish with a tube, you generally don't miss them. Just because you got the exposed hook, there's nothing to bring it through. You pop that thing, and usually it goes right into the top of their mouth. But the downside is it's not weedless. I don't like a weedless guard on here. It tends to get in the way. It doesn't really do anything for me. So this is how I fish it, and it works. So give this a shot. All right, moving on. KVD, the perfect plastics. So like I said, this one is the honey candy. I don't want to waste it because I catch so many on them. So for demonstration, I'm going to put him back. And we'll use the one that didn't catch hardly anything last year. And that is this this black and blue swirl. Probably would catch them, but if I'm going to go that color, I'm probably going to go purple. Now this one, again, easy to rig. What I use with these, what I pair it with, is this Gamakatsu. It's the offset shank worm EWG, and it is the 584.11 size 1/0. That is the hook that matches up well with this. Looks like I got these at Ollie's. Good stuff, cheap. If you can find these at Ollie's, go for it. I tend to buy them at online. But anyway, so again, those of you, most of you know how to do this, but I'll do it for those that really don't. On this worm, you have a flat side, and that's the side you want to. That for me, that's the bottom, so that I point the shank of the hook towards the bottom of the worm. So then all I do is, I'll put this close to the camera so you can see, just come in a little wee bit and then come right back out. All right, you want to come back out the same distance as the shank there for the most part. All right, so and then this normally would be already tied on to a line, so it'll be a little easier to demonstrate. But you bring this thing through, and then your line is going down in there, but your hook is looks like that. Now all you do is, that might be a little on the high side. Sometimes I'll bring it a little further down, but never below this midsection of the worm. Studies have shown, if you've watched some of these guys that show underwater footage, they'll show that the bass will hit the head of the worm 9 times out of 10. When you get nips down here, it's usually the bluegill hitting it or panfish, but bass will come and hit the head of the worm. So then all you want to do is measure with your thumb where the bottom of this hook is. And that's how you know where to go through. So you just pinch here, bring this down where you marked it with your thumb, and bring it back like that. And it lays flat on the top of the worm. Now, some guys will do what's called skin it, where they'll just skin this a little bit. If you're fishing a lot of weedy area, they'll skin that a little bit so that make it a little bit more weedless. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't, depending on the weed situation. Usually if you get it to lay nice and flat, you won't really catch many weeds with that. And I'm telling you, they'll blast that. So that's how that works. Let's keep it moving. All right, let's take that back out of there. I'll put him away later. Moving on. Let's move on to the shad, to the fluke. So I have a smoking shad out here, so I'll show you how I do this one. Now a lot of guys they'll rig this like this so that the hook ends up like this. Okay, and sure, that works very well, but that has not, I've missed a lot of fish this way. My old partner used to say, hey, you bringing it all through this plastic. So what we started doing, and what I do now, is I bring it out the side, and it doesn't really change how it works. So it's the same as this worm. So you just bring in a little bit, pop it back out the side. Again, this would be already tied on to your leader or whatever you're fishing with. And I don't know if you can see that, but that's about all the more you want in the head of the worm. That's perfect. I'm sorry, of the fluke. That'll make that dive. And then what you do is, same thing, you pinch along the side where it's going to come out. You run it through, run it straight through, and run it, and then flatten it on the side. And then that thing, not only is it weedless, but it catches, you get a better hookup. Now, again, some guys, if you're fishing heavy in heavy weeds, you can skin it a little bit if you want. I don't do that because, again, you tend to then, you set the hook and you might get some ball up on the whole plastic of the fluke will ball up on you. I tend to not do that. I get it as flat on there as I can, throw that out there, and believe me, you get good hookups. They hit this thing and you pound them and they're yours. All right. Now, I know this video is getting a little long, so let's keep it pushing. Last but not least is the Gary Yamamoto. Now, I already have a few, the Senkos. I already have a few done already with O-rings. I know my man Alex from Realistic Fishing, he'll use just hair bands or hair ties, small rubber bands, whatever. He uses all kind of different things, and it works great for him. And but I have bought a whole bunch of O-rings. They're super cheap on Amazon, and that's it. But let me just show you how they work. I have one of these applicators. I thought this was the silliest thing ever when I got it, but honestly, it's actually pretty cool in the sense that it makes it really easy when you're out on the lake. So you just load a bunch of these on here, over here. I don't have any extra out right now, but you just kind of load them on here. This just screws in, and then they won't fall off. But then when you want one, these are slid up. When you want one, you just get your Senko, throw it in there, slide this down, and pop it on. And that's a good way to put it on the worm without sort of scraping the worm up. These worms are very soft, and again, they're expensive, so you don't want to mess them up before you catch a few fish on them. And that's it. Now, what do I fish these with? I use a smaller circle hook for these. Every time I'm fishing with my man Penner, he wants to throw this big old hook on there. And that's, I don't know, it works, but I think you're better off the way this fish is hitting this. You don't need a ton of hook. You just want this to pop right into his top of his mouth. Now this is a 221-411 Gamakatsu inline circle, a 1/0. I've even used smaller than this, but this is actually a little bit on the big side. And then all you do is just, I grab a little wee bit of worm, but that pop's not coming off. You throw that on there. You can, pop them along, and you don't need any other weight. This will sink. If you do need weight, I don't like to put split shot or anything up above this. What I like to do is peg it with a penny nail, so a finish nail, whatever you want to call it. I had a whole can of these from my dad, and he left me, I don't know, 5,000 of them, and so that's what ends up going fishing with me. So easy to do. You just get a penny nail, and I know they sell different pegs and fancy stuff that has ribs on it. It doesn't do anything different than this. So you just shove that penny nail right on in there. Fish will never see it. It doesn't alter the worm, other than when it dives, when it goes in the water, it just dives straight down. It's almost like a Neko rig, or a Ned rig. So that it'll just do that on the bottom, and then when you tweak it or twitch it, instead of it having the whoosh motion, it'll dive back down again. So if you're looking for a little bit more action, I usually peg it, and again, it works deadly. So thanks for joining me today. If you haven't subscribed, please do that, all that stuff. Leave the comments, I love those, and I'm going to try to get a little more consistent on getting out some videos. Thanks for joining me today. See you next time on fishingwithvance.com. Burn out.